All the members moving the amendments have already spoken, and this debate comes to an end. Heads 53, 63, 70, 90, 95, 156, and 190. The committee now proceeds to the sixth debate. The debate themes are population, education, manpower, youth, arts and culture, and sports. The respective policy areas covered in this debate are population policy, education, manpower, youth, arts and culture, and sports. 11 members, including Honorable Chen Chi-chuen, Albert Chan, Yuk-man, Helena Wong, Sid Ho, Leung Kwok-hung, Claudia Mo, Kenneth Chen, Gary Fan, John Kwok-che, and Fernando Cheung have respectively given notice to move a total of 86 amendments to reduce the various sums for 7 heads, including the number of heads that I mentioned. The contents of the amendments are all relevant to the areas of this debate. I now first of all call upon Mr. Ray Chan to speak and move amendment number 134 is set out in the Appendix 1E to the script, to be followed by Albert Chan, Yuk-man, Helena Wong, Sid Ho, Leung Kwok-hung, Claudia Mo, Kenneth Chen, Gary Fan, and Peter Cheung and Fernando Cheung to speak respectively, but they may not move amendments at this stage. Mr. Ray Chan. Chairman, I move that amendment number 134 is set out in the Appendix 1E to the script be passed. We are entering the sixth and last debate. How many hours are we going to have, Chairman? We have only 6 members here. I'm not seeking a quorum call, but I hope that members who are going to speak will come back to get ready for their speeches.
Chairman, you mentioned that this debate relates to policy areas including population policy, education, manpower, youth, arts and culture, and sports. I have moved 35 amendments, 17 of them related to the HAB and 9 for the Education Bureau, and also 9 for Immigration Department. Now, I often ask why the Immigration Department will be included in the policy area, because it should come under Security Bureau instead. Maybe it is because it's also under the policy of manpower, so it is included here. Anyway, I would come to talk about that later. Although the Immigration Department is the execution department on a number of matters such as the Marriage Amendment Bill and the case that was judicially reviewed yesterday, that is the spouse, the same-sex spouse of the Hong Kong residents who got married overseas, being rejected from entering the territory. Now, I have a number of amendments: 548, 549, 560, 5663, 565, 566, all of them having to do with cutting the pays for some government officials in the Education Bureau. Now, first of all, of course, we must trace to the root of the problem, and that is Secretary for Education, and that is amendment number 556 to cut the estimated expenditure for the annual emolument for the Secretary for Education, $3.58 million. I wasn't the only one who moved this amendment. Mr. Raymond Wong, Dr. Helena Wong, Dr. Kenneth Chan all moved the same amendment to cut the annual pay of the Secretary for Education. So there will be a lot of remarks on Mr. Our Secretary this afternoon. The Education Bureau received the largest proportion of funding from the government. This year it's $51.3 billion. It is in charge of all education matters in Hong Kong, including pre-primary, primary, secondary, tertiary education, special education, and vocational education. What about Eddie Ng, our Secretary for Education? He is the negative asset of our government. His popularity ratings have continued to be in the trough ever since he assumed office. He ranked the second bottom on the list. He also had a nickname of incompetence. And even members from the pro-establishment camp considered him incompetent. Now, Paul Chan, Secretary for Development, may have other conduct issues, land hoarding, drink driving, etc. What about Eddie Ng? Personal life is not a problem, but his work causes so many problems that he has won this low popularity rating. For Paul Chan, the popularity rating was minus 30-something. For Eddie Ng, Secretary for Education, the rating, according to the survey, was negative or minus 27.6. And these ratings continue to drop. However, these bureau directors have not reflected on themselves and seek to make improvements. They just continue to make mistakes. The most recent news is that Eddie Ng once said that politics would not be brought into school campuses. That was what he once said. However, recently, he appealed to the education sector, including school principals, to support the reform package. He is being criticized for politicizing school campuses. He said that this statement should not be regarded as forcing school principals to support the reform package. It is only with their consent that support will be sought. Well, we understand what blackmail means or intimidation means. Chairman, somebody might call you and say you should watch out because we have the so-called black materials against you, and you should you'd better be careful. I am not threatening you. I'm just looking after you. And he said that students should not take part in activities that may threaten their personal safety. He urged students to think from different perspectives. But now he made that statement to urge school principals or encourage them to support the reform package. He emphasized encouraging principals, not forcing them to do so. Supporting constitutional reform package, preserving democracy. Well, he would say, well, we're going to have a street campaign. I'm not forcing you, but I'm just encouraging you to come this weekend. Well, as bureau director, you are in a position of power, so you should not say that you are not forcing others, but only encouraging others, because the more excuse you give, the stronger the impression of intimidation. He said that school principals are at liberty to choose whether to support the reform package or not. Well, of course, it's a free choice. You wouldn't be holding out the board for school principals to sign their names on it. So you're making them really difficult. They may not want to be so high profile as to come out and sign in the street, because they might be worried that the CY Leung's administration might collapse. and if you drive too closely to the preceding car, there might be accident. So if you are afraid of retaliation, but on the other hand, you may also be worried about crashing into the car in front for following too close. Then you should take a picture when you sign, so that you can show people later. Well, maybe I am going off the track. Anyway, I don't know whether there has been any pressure on bureau directors. Anyway, they must be voluntary in supporting the package since they're in this hot kitchen. But another incident, the national education incident in 2013, the community successfully forced the government to set aside the curriculum framework for moral and national education. The Education Bureau was accused of brainwashing students to learn about the Communist Party's agenda, propaganda, and that led to protests and demonstrations, and the CGO was besieged. And on the radio program, Eddie Ng said that in fact more people supported supported national education than those who opposed. So, using his logic, those who didn't take to the street would be supporting them. So, adopting the same logic, even if Chow Yun gets the signature from 1 million people in Hong Kong, there would still be 5 million who are against the reform package, and they should be ashamed. Well, although this has nothing to do with the Secretary for Education, he should be careful and not to become a laughing stock. And he was criticized as not, neglecting public opinion. In handling the incident of national education, we see how incompetent Eddie Ng was. So that's the view of the community and those who opposed, and even the Communist Party thought that Eddie Ng was incompetent. And after the incident, the popularity rating of Eddie Ng dropped drastically, and the rating continues to drop, and probably will drop all the way until he leaves office. And he should have stepped down. Days ago, Eddie Ng again put up excuses. He said that the curriculum framework hasn't been scrapped. National education is still being developed. It has been suggested that it has revived, and that there are a number of brain salvage projects to negate the effect of brainwashing from the Occupy movement. For example, we have the Sister Schools program, we have mainland exchange programs, we have a change in the Chinese history curriculum, and that the proportion of modern Chinese history will be increased. So they're outsourcing national education to outside Hong Kong, or they're repackaging the national education. All in all, the fact is Hong Kong students do not love mainland enough. They do not love Hong Kong enough. And that they just continue to push forward national education, only that they're repackaging it. In fact, they have been liaising with the Education Ministry in the mainland, and through working with a number of provinces, we formed sister schools. And starting from 2005, the Education Bureau started the Guangdong Hong Kong Sister School Program, and schools in Hong Kong could voluntarily partner with schools in Guangdong to form sister schools. But the Education Bureau was only the facilitator. In the Policy Address 2015, Sau-lan proposes that subsidies be given for schools to form sister schools, and that an annual subsidy of $120,000 will be given for various exchange activities with the mainland at various levels, including debate contests, seminars for parents, and other activities. And it is anticipated that in the coming 3 years, the number of sister schools will go up to 600. And actually, at the panel, we discussed that although $120,000 a year may not be a big sum for the schools, but you're creating this culture that schools would compare among themselves, and that if you don't have a sister school, you should form partnership with one as soon as possible. I ask for a quorum call.
Chamber review.
Mr. Albert Chen. Mr. Chairman, I hope that people won't have to rush in and then have a heart attack. This is already the 6th debate, and it involves many issues relating to the Home Affairs Bureau as well as the Home Affairs Department. So first of all, I'd like to talk about funding for sports as the starting point.
So that members have a better understanding of the logic and the rationale behind these amendments. Of course, the secretaries and also the undersecretaries will not be interested in listening to our arguments, but still they will be on the record, and many years afterwards you will know that I already mentioned this in the past. It's just like the XRL Hong Kong section. I said that the design was so rushed that there were bound to be a cost overrun, and now you see what I said back then was not unfounded. Was not ungrounded. So I have commented on this a number of times, whether it be the HA panel or policy address debate. I have criticized our sports policy a number of times. Hong Kong has not changed for decades in this regard. Sports associations are a hotbed for various evils in Hong Kong, and their problems are numerous. When it comes to transfer of benefits within small circles and collusion and the ugly side of the management, well, sports associations are classic examples for these things. Our national sports associations have many problems. They operate like a black box. There is no transparency in their operation. There is no monitoring mechanism, and the layman leads the experts, and most of the management there do not have any professional knowledge, and there is serious abuse of power by the management, and these that there are no safeguards, protection for our athletes, and public money and resources of these associations are very often spent on inappropriate places, and cronyism is also very common. And the leadership is aged, and there is also collusion and transfer of benefits. There is no fair mechanism for selecting the athletes to sponsor, and the management is very bureaucratic. So I have moved amendments number 148 involving Head 53 to cut $19 odd million from the provision equivalent to the OSFIC's Olympic Committee's year-round provision. The Olympic Committee, the National Sports Associations, they are the crux of the matter. I will talk about the problems of this association. The administration provides tens of millions of dollars, or over $80 million, to this organization every year, and this year the figure has risen to $20 million. The Olympics Committee in Hong Kong is supposed to do to carry out some duties in return for the government's subvention. It has to implement a drug control scheme for athletes, and for retired athletes, it should provide education and support for career development, and is responsible for the management and maintenance of the Olympics House. And as for promotion of popular sports in the community, is also part of their duties. Under the current arrangement, the organization has to submit quarterly reports to the HAB on a fully accountable basis with a full breakdown of its expenses. And this is the criteria arrangement of subvention. And the organization has to submit audited annual accounts to the government. In deciding the right level of subvention to the organization, the administration will consider the operational needs of these specified areas of subvention. So subvention is on a need basis, and the level of subvention is dependent on the areas that require subvention. Given that this is such an important organization, because as I said at the beginning of my speech, the sports associations in Hong Kong have a common problem, which is also shared by this organization, and that's lack of transparency in its operation. It's receiving close to $20 million from the government this year. But if we check the records, we see that so far the association has never publicly announced its accounts. It has never given any account of where the money is spent and how much donations or sponsorship it has received. Well, it has spent public money. If Mr. Kwok is rich enough, well, Mr. Kwok is very rich, and if he foots all the bill of the association, that's fine. Now, if the rich and influential subsidize various expenses for entertainment and other things, that's okay. Perhaps they may be spending more than the subvention by the government, but doesn't mean that the association doesn't have to be accountable to the public in its financial matters. I think this is characteristics of Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we have small circles covering one another, including one another, blowing each other's trumpets, supporting one another. I think this is characteristic of our FC system and also characteristic of our C election. And this is very apparent and obvious in the sports sector. I criticized the Kai-tak Sports City a number of times. Timothy Kwok supported Stage-Appropriation's campaign, and it's an open secret that Stage-Appropriation promised Timothy Kwok that the sports city would be built. If I could prove that it was really an exchange of benefits, I would have reported to the ICAC. So the arrangement was an open secret subsequent to Stage-Appropriation's campaign. So there is no financial monitoring at all. This is unacceptable. I hope that the Audit Commission can conduct a full audit of this association. In fact, I've appealed to the Commission more than once. But it appears that this is a very difficult thing, because there is collusion and condonance from the senior officers of the government, and they are treating public money like their own money. However, this mode of operation must be condemned in this debate. The Olympics Committee and other national sports associations are like clubs of the rich second generations. The first generation has been in control for a few decades, and after they retired or aged, they pass on the controlling positions to their offsprings. Now, if we look at the election of the board of the Olympics Committee, all athletes in Hong Kong are not entitled to vote. Although you belong to a sports association, you're not entitled to vote. There are 75 NSAs. Only 31 of them are entitled to vote. This is a kind of screening. This is a very special arrangement for the privileged. How come the laymen are leading the athletes? How come those who are in power and influential can control these NSAs? No matter how much, no matter how brilliant an athlete is, no matter how much contribution you've made to sports in Hong Kong, you have no say. You don't have any voting rights. Only 31 associations have the right to vote, and again, it is corporate vote. This is characteristics of FC arrangement. The decision, the A31 decision, tallies what we see in NSAs. So you can see that this operation is aligned with what we see in the political scene. Each association is entitled to 2 votes so as to enhance its influence. The General Secretary, the 3 Assistant General Secretary, and 1 Treasurer can have 1 vote each, and the total number of votes is 68. So 35 votes have what to say. 40 members of the board will be returned. Now, this is just open information. In this round of election, Timothy Falk was returned as chairman, and Ronnie Wong, assistant secretary, and also Timothy Falk's son, another Mr. Falk, has become the honorary Deputy General Secretary, and also I will not read out the full list of members of the board. The image of our NSFs is very negative. In 2009, when Mr. Kwok-hung was returned, he was not really qualified. However, to cover his eligibility, some of the rules were changed. The goalposts were shifted to make his election legitimate. Someone in the know urged the chairman of the committee, that is Timothy Falk, to urge his son to withdraw first in order to assure the community. But it turns out that everything was tailor-made, and this mode of operation of the Olympics Committee was apparent. It's just like a family. They operate like a family, and the offsprings of the rich got to inherit from these positions from their fathers. So the operation is very similar to the Hong Kong Football Federation in Hong Kong, and that's why the standard of football has dropped so much in Hong Kong. So the committee is very bureaucratic, and the situation is very serious, and I will continue to comment on this operation later. Dr. Hannah Wong. Chairman. I'd like to speak on Head 156, and my amendment number 558 is relevant. That is to cut the provision for the whole year salary of the Secretary for Education, Mr. Eddie Ng. The amount is $3.58 million.
We are particularly concerned about the SED since he took office. He visited 31 times overseas. In the official circle, he is described as a minister of duty visit. He spent $3.7 billion on this. He's been out of Hong Kong 10 times this year, covering mainland, Southeast Asia, Europe, the US, and others. He led delegation of students to the mainland for these brainwashing delegations. Also visited Indonesia on exchange visits. How effective these visits are, he's learned so much from overseas. How much can he bring the experience to Hong Kong? We haven't seen any relevance so far. Now, if you look at the expenditure on duty visit compared with Mr. Michael Soon, his predecessor, 2011-12 financial year, Mr. Eddie Ng spent 5 times more than Mr. Michael Soon on duty visits. Let's brush aside the effectiveness of his visits in relation to the improvement of the education system. There are so many problems in the education sector that I don't think I can fit them all in within 15 minutes, but I'll try my best. At the education panel, we invited Mr. Eddie Ng to come and talk about the policy address. There is an initiative to promote sister schools. The formation of sister partnership is a repeat of the national education. $200 million has been set aside. Mr. Eddie Ng said that the education panel, or at least his paper, showed really a lot of problems. This initiative is to offer funding to the schools for them to engage in exchanges up north. Or they can invite the sister schools to come to Hong Kong for exchange programs. The management, teachers, students, parents will be involved. The spectrum is very, very broad. For the $200 million, for those taking part in the sister school program, each school will be given $120,000. For 3 years, the school is going to get $360,000 if they're part of the program. So a primary or secondary school in Hong Kong, special school, private or whatever, they can form a partnership with a mainland school and engage in exchanges. This is an inducement in itself. They're going to get $360,000, $120,000 per year. Principals, teachers, students, the management will be put on this exchange program. What are they exchanging? We don't have the focused idea. What entails? Is it merely an opportunity for the students to enjoy the beautiful scenery in the mainland, the history, the culture? Or do you have a templates ABC in the exchange program? From the documents, we get to see that This is nothing new. Back in 2004, the program already started. 300 schools engage in these kind of exchange programs. Over the years, the Education Bureau has been subsidizing an organization, a left-wing organization. I know, Mr. Chairman, you know what the background is. Just looking at 2010, September to 2015, August, 3 contracts have been awarded. And they have a tender process, but this fair organization would win the bid. Altogether, for the 3 contracts, $1.71 billion has been set aside for the organization to act as a go-between. They line up all the schools between Hong Kong and the mainland. When the SED came to the panel, the document slightly mentioned that for the $200 million, other than $120,000 for 1 year for each school, altogether $360,000. It doesn't mention how much has been taken out. As I found out, $8 million has been set aside for professional support. There are some intermediary organizations. If the schools have trouble getting in touch with the mainland counterparts, and there is a go-between organization putting them in touch with the relevant organization. So there is this intermediary organization. The paper is silent on how this intermediary comes about, what the role is for the intermediary. Is it the case that without the intermediary, no one can partake in this program? The officials told us that there was a tendering process. It was fair. It's just that this organization won the bid. I'm sure that this $8 billion is going to be pocketed by the Federation of Education Workers. They collected the funding from the Education Bureau since 2010. So this gives people the perception that this is a transfer of benefits. The money is channeled into this organization for it to organize these brainwashing delegations. If there is one single intermediary which can provide a link between Hong Kong and the mainland, then we do have reason to believe that this is a brainwashing campaign. What if the students would like to see the tenement mothers or the activist lawyers? I don't think these kind of visits would not be included. Can they approach these different parties? The Education Bureau never answered questions of this nature. We've plowed so much funding into it, and they are relaxing the criteria, and the Federation of Education Workers do the job. And there are 600 schools that have been involved. The Federation is monopolizing the situation. So much money has been plowed into it. I think this is some kind of a cross-boundary indoctrination program. If you want this sister program, you should leave the autonomy to the schools and parents to see whether they would like to join. Now you are offering all these inducements. If they want to engage in the exchange program, what do they want to say? Who do they want to meet? I think we have to leave it up to the professional judgment and decision of the teachers and parents themselves. It's no good to leave it in the hands of the Federation of Education Workers. So, Chairman, I am very much against this exchange program involving sister schools. Other than that, recently we are particularly concerned about these teaching kits about the basic law for the schools, and there is a CD-ROM, there are booklets, and people are studying the content of these teaching kits. We can see that the EDB is implementing or following through the content of the white paper handed down by the State Council back in June last year. And the details come in for a lot of criticism. There is a mention, for example, of the relationship between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. In this teaching kit, it propagates a very confusing message. There is a mention of cooperation between the three branches. The cooperation of the three branches, it is practiced in the mainland of China. In Hong Kong, it's always been the case that there is a separation of powers. We have to uphold the independent judiciary in Hong Kong, whereas in the mainland of China, the executive and the legislature and the judiciary are working hand in gloves. I've heard from Dr. Elizabeth Kwok that the police are making the arrest, but the arrestees are walking free from the court, and she's terribly upset. I think Dr. Kwok has been indoctrinated to believe that there should be cooperation between the three branches of powers. She much rather would like to see them incarcerated for 10 years like Liu Xiaobo. As a legislative member, you don't really get to grips with the system in Hong Kong. We have the separation of three powers. We have the independent judiciary. Dr. Kwok is not here now. We heard from a legislator criticism of the judiciary setting people free while the police made arrest. Is she trying to turn Hong Kong into a place like China? I find it very difficult to teach with this teaching kit. I can only say the cooperation of the three branches of powers is practiced in the mainland of China. The problem is that the judiciary is not independent of the government. There is no independent judiciary, and there are so many miscarriages of justice. A lot of rights activists are rounded up and incarcerated. This is the main weakness of the mainland system. Hong Kong should not be allowed to go down this path. The mainland should be learning from the Hong Kong system instead of the other way around. There is a diagram in this kit showing that Hong Kong has independent judicial power. This is all very confusing. With independent judiciary, how can there be any cooperation between the three branches of powers? So this teaching kit is really not up to scratch. Should the teachers be teaching on the basis of page 1 or page 10? Because they are telling two different stories. Education minister, instead of traveling around the world, you have to sort out these teaching kits and what sort of policy are you practicing in Hong Kong. Turning now to the sins of editing, I can't really end for my speech for 3 days. And there is a mention of teaching Chinese in Putonghua. Teaching Chinese language in Putonghua. Now, the Secretary for Education at the Education Bureau panel, for no rhyme or reason, suggested that teaching Chinese in Putonghua will be will become the long-term target of the schools in Hong Kong? Has there been any consultation on the teaching of Chinese using Putonghua? I think even without consultation, you should have come up with some scientific evidence to show that there would be benefits arising from teaching Chinese in Putonghua. Would it be conducive to students learning Chinese in a better way? Is it the case that students would not be able to learn as well as it would be if it is taught in Putonghua? Unless you have all the evidence, then it would be really a deceiving kind of act.
Mr. Ho. Thank you, Chairman. In this debate, I have moved altogether 6 amendments, including the consultancy study on the operation of the Kai-tak multi-purpose sports complex and the Kwok-che sports ground and the history museum. I think we can divide them up into 2 speeches, one on sports and the Kwok-che Cultural Center and the History Museum to the next part. Now the $14 million under subhead 700 head 55 will be spent on the consultancy study for the Kai-tak sports complex. Very rarely do I share the same view with Sau-lan, but I agree with them on this. The Kai-tak multi-sports complex spans 27 hectares of land. And last time when we submitted our bid for the East Asian Games, we came up with this idea. That is, there should be a major sports arena in the urban district for international sports events. And we've recently been told from the paper that there will be a 50,000 seat stadium taking up 27 hectares of land, and this will be greater, even bigger than the West Kowloon Cultural District. After Sau-lan assumed office, he tried every means to increase land supply, to increase housing supply, and he proposes to scrap the multi-sports complex for more residential flats. Well, the Labour Party is open on this suggestion. In particular, when we see the details of this multi-sports complex, we think that at least the plan should be revised to release land for private or public housing. Now, the whole sports complex spans 27 hectares. Now, Chairman, perhaps you need to watch the video instead. Now, this egg-shaped area is the 50,000 seat stadium for the 2 smaller eggs. These are for popular sports. There is a sports complex as well as an indoor games hall. This small dome can accommodate 4,000 people. Schools can hire the venue for games, or small ball game matches can be held with fewer spectators. And this indoor games hall is to compensate the East Kowloon for lack of sports facilities. As for this 50,000 seat stadium, this dome will be another white elephant. We query strongly the need for this large-scale sports facility. Will it in the end be used for sports? Will it really help Hong Kong in developing into a city for international sports events? Can it really encourage young people to become professional athletes? We really question that. However, this stadium will be taking up about 30% of the whole area. So if we take 30% out of the 27 hectares, that is 9 hectares of land for housing development, then we are for this. We support this idea. as long as we're not building luxurious homes, as long as we are building either HOS or PRH flats, then we support that. As for the cost for this sports complex, this is the MOD prices in September, $25 billion. But as we learned from recent experience, the XRL originally cost $67 billion. And at that time, the Bureau Director said that there wouldn't be cost overrun and they wouldn't come back to LegCo for more funding. Well, let's wait what they would what explanation they have when they come back to LegCo after the break for this XRL project with huge cost overruns. We see that every time every government project has cost overruns of up to 40 to 50%, or in the case of the XRL, 100%. So we don't know ultimately how much this sports complex would cost. I repeat, for the indoor games hall, the 4,000-seat sports ground, if these facilities can promote popular sports for people to improve their health, and we support that. And we also support the idea of using the area in the sports complex to just build a park as the lungs of the district. But we're against the proposal. Now, the several members of the Labour Party did not have enough votes to veto the White Elephant project. So ultimately, the proposal was carried in the Public Works Subcommittee. And we did put some questions to the government, and according to their replies, there were a number of mega events in the past few years that couldn't be held in Hong Kong because of insufficient or inadequate facilities. And that included the concert of Jay Zhou and the international celebrity Mariah Carey and the Grand Prix. But that was irrelevant. The Grand Prix for motorcycles, but I don't think these events could be held inside the complex anyway. And there was also another digital music festival spanning 3 days, which would be held in Frankfurt. And another Canadian singer, Celine Dion, would like to sing give a concert in Hong Kong, but her agent said no, because we could not provide a stadium large enough. Our Coliseum only had a 10,000-seat capacity. So I further asked, how many international singers would you anticipate? Do you anticipate to come to Hong Kong every year with concerts that sells? And the answer is 5. So let's say if there are 2 shows per night and you sell 80% of the tickets, then what does the government get? Less than $90 million. So if you use the stadium for giving concerts, then when will we be able to recover cost when we spend billions of dollars on the project, let alone the land price? So we must ask, after building this stadium, how many times must it be used before we recover cost? And what about the opportunity cost? Say, if we did not spend money and land on this 50,000-seat stadium, and instead if we use the resources to build PRH or HOS flats, the social benefits would far exceed the 20% income from ticket sales of the 10 concerts per year. And from the government's information papers, we understand that some events were held in the past in the Hong Kong Stadium, and it's true that if the seating capacity is increased, more can take part in it. So what are these events about? A fundraising event and another variety show to welcome the astronauts, and also Bayern Munich versus the China national team in the 10th anniversary cup match. That was quite good, but we heard that in fact tickets were not sold but given away for free. As for the variety show for astronauts, for Olympic medal winners, we understand that surely tickets were given away. And there's also this event, the English Alliance 2012-2013, an education activity to create a record on reading. So our question is this: if this is not mainly used for sports, if this is for social events or celebrations, then how many days would this event take up? Must we spend so much money on this education activity? Must that event be held in that 50,000 seat stadium? How about Hong Kong Stadium or somewhere outdoor, say the space outside West Kowloon Cultural District? Instead of spending so much money on the sports complex. Chairman, in the multi-sports complex, there are also other facilities. For example, tourism facilities. According to the government, there may be a study on whether to provide a hotel in the area for athletes, staff, or even spectators. But like I said, how many events we have in a year, and how many rooms will be taken up, how many nights would the staff or the athletes take up in this hotel? What about the rest? This will be a 3-star hotel for tourists, so you don't need to build a hotel here. There is other planning for hotels. According to the PWSC paper, there are also other irregularities. There will be no less than 10,000 square meters grade 8 office space. Now, apart from allowing the stadium to be used for concerts, if there are already other alternatives in East Kowloon for grade 8 offices, why do we need to have so much office space in Kai Tak sports complex? In fact, in the Chi-chuen Youth Square, there is a hotel, a 2-story hotel. The objective originally was to facilitate international exchange, and later there was an audit report which pointed out that international exchange events only took up about 2 months in a year, whereas for the rest of the time the hotel was used as to receive tourists, and we should not be confused. And apart from that, there is also 35,000 square meters site for commercial and retail purposes. So that would mean another shopping mall. So don't use the pretext of a small sports complex to provide tourist facilities. We don't agree that. So at the PWSC, the Labour Party voted against the proposal. We have also moved the amendments here. We urge members to reconsider this allocation of $40 million for the consultancy study that is bundled with the budget. We must make clear to the government that we only approve the budget if he is willing to give up the White Elephant project. Mr. Sau-lan, Kwok-hung, I'd like to talk about amendment number 216 and 219 about the Labour Department, and 218 as well, in fact. Amendment number 216 is about cutting the annual estimated expenditure for Labour Department for supporting the Standard Working Hours Committee and the relevant work, excluding expenditure for on staff. That means staff will receive their pay. I must do that, or else we will be criticized for cutting their pay.
Well, the pro-establishment camp would just do their very best to smear us. Okay, the reason why I'm proposing this cut, that's because the Labour Department, as a department, would of course have its own work objective, and the LAB is run by the Labour Department. Chow Pak got his name tarnished at that committee, but then the LAB, the Labour Advisory Board, as an institution, nobody has been able to answer my question about it. So for anything that has to do with employer-employee, if it's about their interest, then we will have to have a tripartite agreement before it can be put before the administration for legislation or legislative amendment or drafting. But then this is the baby of the government in the first place, and the current term of government just followed the past experience. So it's $1 million question. So which body would prevail when there is a conflict, the LAB or this council? And now we have also got this Standard Working Hours Committee. Mr. Chairman, you would of course remember it. Donald Tsang also set up this statutory minimum wage committee, and when I first joined this council, Chairman, you also said eloquently about this, and you said that well, what kind of where can we find a standard? This is a political issue, and you said that this is a political issue, so there is no standard at all. So long as there is majority support for this, then we can have it. But then, of course, Chairman, you are wrong, because the majority of the public in Hong Kong are poor. And therefore, if you look at majority interest in Hong Kong, indeed, their interest has been deprived. And Matthew Cheung hasn't got promoted yet. He was still the permanent secretary. So I filed a judicial review against the government, and they lost several times. And what did they do then? They were resorting to tricks, and they said that they were about to do it. They had already set up the committee, and of course I lost the case. But then in the court, the government gave a legitimate expectation to the court. So a word of digression here. So I think sometimes we really have to give it a bit of a push. So C.Y. Leung made the unilateral decision, and then when you asked him, he said that we cannot tell you. And then for all the other EXCO members, what are their views? Well, they said that well, EXCO's meetings and records are confidential, and therefore they cannot disclose it. So it boils down to his own personal decision. So see how he responded. He said that well, you can just sue me. Why bother to invoke the PNP ordinance? well, he might have sounded very solemn and upright and righteous. But then when you go to the court, you've been at court with me, and you won because you said that I'd invoke 73(1) and so on. Well, if the court accepts your argument, then you would win. So both sides would be able to present their arguments, and then the judge would look at all the arguments before him, and then he would decide which party's arguments are more convincing. So what did Sau-lan do in this case? All right, he said that why don't you sue me, and I would not say anything unless I lost the case. And then Pik-wan won the case, and the judgment was that all right, let's set aside the decision last time, and then you will have to reconsider it. So this is just a despicable guy. So he rather lost the court case because he has a lot of public money to waste, and Kwok-hung would do whatever he wants. All right, the court ruled that the decision last time had to be set aside, and you're just putting up a brave face. So I just like to prove that this government does not play by the rule of the game. All right, you said that you just followed the norm. All right, Matthew Zhang, when you were the permanent secretary, when I sued the government, you also gave the affirmation. So you said that we've been doing it for a long time, since 1932. Up till now, we've been discussing it. All right, for the 1932 legislation, you did not comply with it. You said that the 1932 legislation was enacted by the Labour Party, and now it no longer counts. So do you want me to do it again? I've already got this case, and I had my hair cut, and I lost $870,000. So are you going to dig into my pocket again? And you'll be saying that you've been working on it already, and Kwok-hung is just messing up everything. If that's the case, why don't you tell me? You even say that you would give some reprieve to the public, so that the public can will be able to revive themselves. All right, Hong Kong's workers, from those earning more than 100,000 and those earning less than $14,200, none of them enjoy the protection of standard working hours. So for people making so much money, you don't have to be bothered if they have to work long hours. But then you're wrong. Let me explain. Because even if you have to work, if you're not willing, then after you've worked for more than standard working hours, then you can be exhausted, and you might die of fatigue. So even if you try to put up with it, but then with the passage of the law, then if you work too much, if you work too hard, then you can just be excused because the law would protect you. All right, if your employer pay you OT, it's not going to work, because with standard working hours, then inevitably you would set a limit. So whoever goes beyond that, then the other party can say no. So you talk about workers' rights. All right, you would try to protect them from cradle to grave. But do you not agree that we should enact legislation on standard working hours? But then you're not doing it. So without the rules, how can we set things right? So you're not willing to do anything. So how can we start any reforms? All right, if I filibuster, and if you sustain injury or illnesses, you can sue me. And initially, I don't want to work, but then you've been forced to do so. So even if you get OT payment, well, what about my injuries? Well, that's the situation in Japan. But then you're not willing to do even that. All right, we've been saying that, okay, we've talked about it for such a long time. Why don't you draw a line? So you're trying to get blood out of the rock. Can that be done? So should I still pay him? This is a painful experience as far as I'm concerned, because I lost a court case, and it cost me almost $1 million. That's the last time. So are we going to start this all over again? That's why the incumbent bureau director or the former permanent secretary, why don't you have mercy on us? Well, you've delayed it, and I've already told you what's the leverage here. And if you worked on the statutory minimum wage, then if you have no idea as to how long workers work these days, then you simply are not able to do the calculation. So that's the components of the formula. So you have to have all the components there. So we are doing arithmetic, we are doing mathematics. All right, that's algebra. I've already told you, and I was teased in the old council building. All right, you can see that the situation was just bizarre. I gave you the example. That's the tram association, and the driver worker told us that well, because we were protesting, and he was not able to work overtime, and it's really sad. So they have to work overtime, or else they wouldn't be able to make a living. So the FTU is best at that. All right, that's no longer the case. They used to live in very humble living or very humble accommodation. Now, some of them actually live in the middle class district, and well, the smaller size of the flat would be at least 800 square feet, and they are now having or driving their own private cars. So if you're not able to ascertain the standard working hours for an ordinary worker, then the statutory minimum wage will not be meaningful at all. That's what we are seeing now. Well, legislation on standard working hours was one of the pledges made by Sau-lan in his manifesto, and when he tried to get the support from the voters, the FTU was one of the first to come out in support of him. All right, you said that there was no interest whatsoever, and even An Jiang might have talked about the interest. All right, you just said that you would support him. I don't know what experience you had with him. That's why you thought that you could support him. And then the FTU made it clear that they'd like to get political reward. It's a quid pro quo arrangement. So you're talking about someone, well, in fact, you're rewarding a group which had been trampled on in the past. Well, when they asked you, how are you? Are you fine? Then it means that, are you dying? Well, I just put it back upstairs. That's the manifesto. So it's almost like a dead paper. You've made it clear that as soon as you assume office, you would be introducing legislation on standard working hours. So has he talked to you? Mr. Jiang, have you talked about the progress that has been made? All right, is it like the INT Bureau? That there's just talk and no action? Is he really working very hard on it? No, I don't think that's the case. Chairman, so what's the point of talking the talk without walking the walk? So he just doing things that would be beneficial to him or to his team. But then, whenever there were any pledges that would benefit the public, they would just renege on their promise. So it's not me that is who is accusing him. In fact, Chen Yun-han also confronted him in public, and then he just said it tongue in cheek. So she confronted you in the public, and he dare not say that. Well, he can't help giggling. Chen Yun-han, well, I'm lying, and still you believed me, so I can't help laughing. I would do the same. for a chief executive with a manifesto, if you assume that he was right, then I should have scolded Sau-lan, but then I think I've already missed the opportunity of scolding him. That's why I can only ask the one under him to be responsible. All right. In the morning, well, he said that he would be thinking about standard working hours in the morning, and then in the afternoon and even in the evening, he would always think about this, and he would send this short message to Matthew Cheung that I'd like to introduce legislation on standard working hours, and now nothing has come about. Well, Matthew Cheung, is that the case? Has your boss been doing that? No. Well, I think it's just a waste of time. Well, he was going to distribute the constitutional reform package leaflets at Lam Shan Estate, but then once the news was leaked, he immediately retracted the decision. So it's really bad.
You.
Ms. Claudia Mo. Mr. Chairman. I want to amend the part of the appropriation bill that spends $800 million for employment of net teachers. Oh, we'll talk about $800 million. Money can easily become hundreds of billions of dollars. So $800 million may not seem a big sum compared to the hundreds of billions of dollars we spend elsewhere. But this is a very important scheme. This net English scheme, net teacher scheme, well, I think it's just window dressing on a part of the Education Bureau. This is just for window dressing. We have done very little when it comes to teaching English to students. Well, you may say that, isn't it good to have these net teachers in schools? Now, if you've been to schools, if you've talked with headmasters and students, you will know. Now, I dare not say that the scheme is entirely useless. It is bound to have some effects, but is $800 million well spent. And if we spend this $800 million elsewhere on our local English teachers, wouldn't it be more effective? Wouldn't it be better if we train our own English teachers and we'll let them know or see that teaching English in Hong Kong is a very important area? It may seem too mercenary because education, is not about money, but still money is important. This native-speaking English teacher scheme, for a new net teacher, he receives as much as $47,000 per month, that is salary plus other benefits, and his maximum salary can reach $90,000, on par with what some secondary school headmasters are receiving. And for our local graduate masters, the starting salary is around $25,000 a month. So they are teaching in the same school, and yet this one school two system scenario would reduce teachers' incentive to do better. In this academic year, 2014-15, each net teacher in a primary school costs $850,000 per capita, and in a secondary school, $980,000 per academic year. That's close to $1 million. That covers both salaries and MPF and other benefits. You can, the one school two system scenario is unimaginable. They have end of contract gratuity and housing benefits. They have housing benefits And of course, only net teachers from overseas are eligible. Still, they are privileged. They also have insurance coverage. They have passage allowance and luggage allowance. The money may not be a big sum, but it's a matter of principle. You use so many benefits to attract overseas teachers to teach English in Hong Kong. What for? You spend $800 million just to teach good English to our primary and secondary school students to ensure that they would not stutter when they are talking with a foreigner, and they would not feel self-conscious. But this $800 million is not value for money. The Civic Party has done a survey. It was done about 3 months ago. 36% of the respondents felt that our English education in the English subject is a failure, and about half of the respondents felt that the net scheme was just so. About 7% felt that it was entirely useless. I believe those who felt this way would mostly be the school teachers, principals, and even the students. And 53% of the respondents felt that the resources for the net scheme should better be spent for training our local teachers. I hope that the administration has heard the findings of the poll. I've asked teachers who teach English in schools in the past 6 to 7 years, thanks to the PTU, I have been to hundreds of primary schools and secondary schools telling them it is fun to learn English, and ask them not to be intimidated and don't be scared about the subject. And the teachers told me that it wouldn't be fair to say that the net teachers were entirely useless, but if local teachers were to do the job, would there be a big difference? These teachers told me that they would be just as effective. No. It's the other way around. If local teachers took up the positions of net teachers, what would be the outcome of education? There would be no downside, and the good side is teachers would be more familiar with teachers, and there would be better career prospects for local students. What do you mean by this sense of familiarity? Well, a net teacher may be American, a Japanese, a Korean, it doesn't matter. So long as the teacher has English as his mother tongue and he is a qualified teacher, he can be a net teacher, and that will provide the English environment. But this is not really the case. In traditional elite schools, this language environment is just a bonus, because the students are already very proficient in English already. In ordinary schools, the school kids would say, oh, it's funny, it's interesting, we've got a foreign teacher, because the teacher, well, you can't expect him to know Cantonese, so the two are not really talking to one another, and they enjoy very generous benefits. Very often they want to do their job well, but there are challenges, because the teachers in the same staff room will really feel very unhappy. How come a net teacher can get double of what I'm getting? Assuming that a local teacher gets $400,000 per year, a NET teacher can get close to 1 million. Is he more experienced or qualified? Not necessarily. It's just because that he happens to have English as his mother tongue. How can that be? When I was a kid, my English teachers were locals, and they spoke English as a second language. And the Education Bureau feels that Hong Kong is an Asia world city, and people claim that our standard of English is dropping, and therefore we must have some gimmicks. We must employ some NET teachers for window dressing. Whether they are really effective is secondary. Many NET teachers did not get their contract renewed because they felt rather bored working here, because they were not invited to join in lunches with teachers. They felt lonely because they couldn't speak the language. Of course, there may be individual teachers that have been very loyal, and they have served a school for a number of years. But the example I mentioned is actually a local. He's a foreigner who lives in Changchao, and therefore he has served a school for many years. But for other NET teachers, they're just like foreign domestic helpers. We have to pay for their passage to fly to Hong Kong. This is outrageous. Of course, I've heard Mr. Michael Tian say that in his school, I think it's DBS, he complained that teachers were not very conversant in English. He asked what is meant by gravity, and his teacher told him that what goes up must come down. That's true. We can stand here, sit here, all because of gravity. If the English standard of our local teachers are not as good as you expect, then we should spend more resources to nurture them. They should not just teach students 10 items of new vocabulary and just that there can be dictation next week. But if the vocabulary items are not really used, it's useless. I am an adjudicator in every year's school speech festival. Tomorrow, I'll be in the same event every year. Students from international schools, NESF schools, well, those students are better than not just university students, but adults, because English is their mother tongue. But for students from local schools, from our mainstream schools, they don't even have the standard of a P6 student. Why is the English standard of local students so bad? It's all because of money. Let's be honest. For parents, they will tend to choose a KG using English as the medium of instruction. Parents may try to get their kids into a DSS, direct subsidy school, an international school if they can afford it. And for those who are even better off, it's just like the senior officials here, they send their parents to boarding schools in the UK, in Canada, and Australia as soon as they turn 13 or 14. What for? So that they can acquire good English. This is because English is an international language. They hope that if their kids can acquire good English, they can be successful in all parts of the world, because nobody will ask you whether you can speak English, Japanese or Swahili or this and that. People will ask you if you know English or not. So we all know how important English is. We are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in English, and education takes up about 22% of our overall expenditure. We spend close to a quarter of our expenditure on education, and one important aspect of education is to teach English to our students. English is not just an eye-opener. If you can acquire language, you acquire the civilization and culture that goes with it. And English is also a working language. You use it to be successful in your career. You can't do it by just having native teachers. Schemes to enhance your English proficiency may not be effective at all. Whether our kids can learn English well, they can only fend for themselves. I hope that the government and the Secretary for Education, Eddie in particular, should think of how we can properly train up our own local English teachers.
Mr. Peter Cheung. Chairman, thank you. Chairman, under 69.3 of ROP, I move CSA 564 to cut 700 subhead to cut $50 million. And this is program A48, the funding for the IT development. I seek to cut the funding because I feel that this is something that should be discussed at the Finance Committee instead of hiding behind the budget to circumvent the Council. The government said that because of the sheer number of Finance Committees and the time taken and the procedures being too complicated, the administration decided to put 25 items or FC items into the budget. This has undermined the convention of the Council. This also circumvents the scrutiny of the Legislative Council. The members of the public don't have any chance to understand the development of the IT education. And this is wholly undesirable. As the government said in the consultation document, education represents an important investment. And it is an indispensable commitment, since education will make a difference to whether the younger generation will be able to practice what they learn. The IT element will be incorporated into education because this would be conducive to learning. The use of IT in education would also promote interaction and communication between the teachers and the students. I support the funding proposal in this regard. However, IT education should have the support of hardware and software before we can see tangible results. The fact that they bypass the Council doesn't mean that it would be beneficial to the teachers and the students. The promotion of IT education means that there should be sufficient Wi-Fi connectivity. According to government information, in 2012-13, according to a survey conducted on IT education, less than 10% of the public school classrooms enjoy Wi-Fi connectivity. In the consultation document, the government says that there would be the schools that will be wired up so that the students would enjoy Wi-Fi connectivity in each and every classroom to browse the websites. In the early part of 2014, in the e-learning support program, the government earmarked $35 million to disperse funding to 100 public schools to provide Wi-Fi connectivity. But in the budget, the government replied to the Special Finance Committee there would only be $105 million set aside in 2015-16 for 3 triennium. 900 schools will be given funding to support the Wi-Fi connectivity. What is paradoxical is that in 2015-16, the funding will be $51 million, and 400 schools will be covered in 2015. The schools that will be using digital textbook and e-learning platform. After this funding, only $54 million will be set aside for 900 schools to step up their Wi-Fi connectivity. In other words, on average, each school will be allotted $60,000, which is far lower than the $350,000 that's projected in the e-learning program. There are some schools that are still that are using the optic fiber, the old format optic fiber, that will not be able to cope with the e-learning needs. If teachers and students need to use Wi-Fi facilities, the speed will be low, and this will be detrimental to learning. How will the government make sure that all public schools will be wired up with Wi-Fi connectivity, and how can they improve the Wi-Fi network so that the fourth strategy will be implemented properly? Unfortunately, we couldn't get the chance to put questions and to the administration. Also, there is this element of privacy in the use of mobile network, Wi-Fi network. It is proposed that the cloud computing, maintenance and repair should be procured as one package. But some said that this procurement would lead to certain information like the copyright of the teaching and privacy will be undermined. The server was attacked during the Occupy movement. If some cloud providers' services are impeded, and as a result, many schools have to repair and maintain their services, then how can the service providers be able to cope? If they rely on cloud computing to store the information, it will be difficult to guard against any hacking. It would be more risky than if the schools have their own service. The PTU conducted an opinion survey in June. 60% of the respondents disagreed with the procurement of cloud computing service, and they don't think, they're not worried about the risk of the information being leaked. The government should listen to the views of the education sector. There should be flexibility for the schools. They should not simply offer inducement to divide the schools. In terms of security, in terms of the mobile network, the government said that e-learning has become the trend, and the government will allow the schools to use mobile devices for learning purposes. In the appropriation bill, 40 million a lump sum subsidy has been set aside to cover 400 schools to procure the mobile computer devices. In other words, $100,000 per school. And the savings arising from the procurement of the mobile devices will be spent on the procurement of cloud computing service. Now, this amount of money will not be enough to procure the mobile devices, and the popularity is not such that each student will be able to own a device. And I'm not sure whether this is really throwing good money after bad. The replacement of mobile devices to replace the desktops requires subsidies on the part of the government. Otherwise, it's only the schools, the more prestigious schools, that will be able to procure mobile devices. The grassroots schools would find it difficult to achieve the same target anticipated by the government. And there is a divide, there is a yawning gap between the schools with sufficient means and those schools without sufficient means. According to PTU, 87% of the teachers would find it difficult to monitor the browsing behavior of the students after using the mobile devices, like the social media and online gaming. It would give rise to security leakage and problems with the devices being damaged and liability problems. It seems that the education sector doesn't see eye to eye with the administration, and the government has to tread carefully, and they should not ignore the input of the teachers. As far as the education sector is concerned, the most important policy is to designate a coordinator here. Each year, the government disperse $300 billion to cover 1,000 schools. But in terms of the procurement of software and hardware and repair and maintenance, which will cost quite a bit of money, the subsidy, there would be very little in the subsidy for the schools to set up a coordinator post. They have to resort to private sector service. And the services vary a great deal from provider to provider. And many a time the providers would not be able to provide suitable services because of their unfamiliarity with the schools. Because of the limited funding, they would not be able to hire individuals who are familiar with the schools, and these are not permanent posts, and there is no career prospect, there is no annual pay increment, so there is a high turnover. The lump sum grant is causing a lot of problems to the schools. There is not enough subsidies to hire qualified IT coordinators, and this will be detrimental to the IT sector. The improvement of the packages for the IT personnel would be important because privileged information must be entrusted to the qualified IT coordinator. Now, this problem has been besetting schools for many years. If the government hopes that the schools will incorporate the IT element into education, then the government has to increase the spending on repair and maintenance. In the long time, IT coordinators should become part of the establishment of the school. The government cannot shy away from this issue. If the schools cannot retain the right personnel, then the schools will not be able to achieve what they intend to achieve. And this would undermine the opportunity of the students to use IT. The government has to come up with clear guidelines so that there would be proper support rendered to the underprivileged students, including SCN students and students of ethnic minorities, the government must put money where its mouth is. The support is grossly inadequate to promote IT education. The Education Bureau has to offer more support, and that would widen the gap between the underprivileged students and the mainstream students. For the government to pull this item from the Finance Committee and put it in the budget, we will not be able to give our input into the program. And this will be detrimental to the students themselves. I think the government is only undermining the success of the program.
Mr. Deputy. Well, just now I talked about standard working hours under Head 90. Now come to talk about the Amendment 217. And that is the statutory minimum wage has failed to designate rest time and meal breaks. And we understand, as you do, Mr. Deputy, that the law on SMW has been enacted for some time, but there are still a number of loose ends. For example, whether meal breaks should be paid. And now we have different views. It depends on the employer's attitude towards their employees and the sectors that we're talking about. And of course, this is unsatisfactory. We, at the stage of scrutinizing the bill, neglected this issue. I did. I don't know whether you did as well. Now, we are going to have standard working hours, and so far these loose ends are still not tied. We understand that under pressure, our major business players would give concessions. That is, rather than going against public pressure, since we are such a big corporation like Cafe de Coral, if the controversy, say, over standard working hours or whether meal breaks should be paid or not continues, the business would definitely be affected because consumers can choose not to patronize the business. So this is the market mechanism. Business operators can set their own rules based on their own circumstances. But let's say if the corporation isn't under public scrutiny, say if it's in the logistics business, then its business is not retail based, that it isn't based on the consumer's choice, then you can't exert pressure on them. So in terms of publicity in education, the Labor Department should at least do two things on statutory minimum wage. Bureau Director, you should listen to this. There should be a genuine disclosure of facts. That is, after implementation of statutory minimum wage in different sectors, among different enterprises, what is the way of handling paid or unpaid meal breaks? This, of course, will help the government in pushing forward an amendment to the paid meal breaks or unpaid meal breaks. Well, Mr. Deputy, nowadays we like to talk about public opinion a lot and opinion polls. So if the majority of enterprises resolve the issue of meal break payment through either mutual negotiation or other means, then we could avoid this controversy. So this will become the trend. For example, the Cafe de Coral may be in the lead, and if this is the practice of this enterprise as the leading enterprise in the industry, then other operators in the business will follow suit, or they'll be exploiting workers, and consumers will be driven away. So on publicity for SMW, the Labour Department has done nothing. Well, Mr. Deputy, you're also in the business sector. Have you ever heard of this survey or report on implementation of SMW? And the details on meal break payment arrangements among enterprises. To some extent, the government is taking the lead. Well, we criticized heavily the Stage-Appropriation, and because of the work of the housing department and housing authority being heavily outsourced, they agreed to have a statutory minimum wage. But you need to let the public know what you have done by being in the lead. And what about statutory organizations and other subsidized organizations receiving government grants? Have they done it? For the non-outsourced staff, I suppose this has been implemented. What about others? Back then, in order to run for another term, Chi-chuen agreed that extra payment should be given to outsourced workers. Now, is the government doing the same? Well, if the SMW Publicity Committee doesn't do anything, then would anything be done by the top level? Well, that's just like what my niece is doing. She would say that there is no exam when there is, only that she had the exam and got a very poor marks. So what I want to say is this. We have revised upwards the SMW for the second time to $32.5. So we already have SMW. For the loose ends, have you consulted the Labour Advisory Board on how to tie the loose ends? Or before you consult the LAB, have you done anything? Say, for example, 70% have paid meal breaks, and only 30% is outstanding. So on this point, I think we should not put up with it. In April 2011, I just want to explain to Mr. Deputy that 40,000 government outsourced workers did not have paid meal breaks. So it has been 4 years. Now, for the 40,000 workers, do they enjoy paid meal breaks or not? Tell us. Give us evidence. The other major problem is this. Well, the government said that at the time when the contract was signed before the implementation of SMW, there was no mentioning of payment for meal breaks. And let me give you an example. An alliance representing employers made this remark. they reasoned that at the time when the contract was signed, they had no idea that these SMW would be implemented, and they just said that they would not follow the SMW rates. So they call themselves victims. It's been years. So have you followed up on this issue for new contracts? Have you found out whether they followed the electrical's direction or not? Well, Mr. Leung Kwok-hung, which amendment are you talking about? I read it out already. You're talking about 217. 217 is not about pay. It's only about expenditure for publicity. Now you're talking about pay cuts, so please don't digress. I'm sorry, just a slip. Expenditure, right. So you're suggesting that the remuneration should not be cut, only the expenditure should be cut. Thank you for your correction. So these two things are not the same. Anyway, where was I? We cut the spending because no work had been done. Well, Mr. Deputy, you are very wise. Thank you for your reminder. In 2014, on the 8th of December 2014, according to a media report, 7,000 Mod 1 staff did not have paid meal breaks. And that's the crux of the question. The government took the lead in not giving paid meal breaks. So how can you lobby support? How would you say that you are better than Cafe de Coral? Of course, Cafe de Coral may not be the good guy. It's in the retail business. They must appeal to consumers. For the 7,000 Mod 1 or civil servants on Mod 1 scale, they account for 99%. So only 1% of them have paid meal breaks. So of the for the 7,000 workers, only 40 enjoy paid meal breaks. It's like winning lottery. This should be a universal right. But even in the government, you need to be the few chosen ones to have this right. So I must hold you responsible. And in 2014, there was another report saying that the government might be adopting the 3 no's policy, that is no disruption to service, no increase in resources, and no extra payment. So with the 3 no's, what else can be done? On this point, Mr. Deputy, I think if we cut the expenditure, we would force the Bureau Director, Mr. Matthew Zhang, to tie the loose ends, and there are just too many loose ends. I think the government should set an example and give pay meal breaks for the 7,000 civil servants on Mod 1 scale. So that you can say you've done your job. We are a metropolis city. Our law should be here to help the underprivileged. And if there are equal supporting votes and opposing votes, the chairman should vote to oppose the motion to help the underprivileged. The government is in a more powerful position, so you should help the underprivileged. So why would you support this business organization that is not ultimately politically accountable? Mr. Yip-man.